Our special Versus episode of Bonus Round comes to a close as we face off the two biggest console exclusives of the year. Shane Satterfield, Garnet Lee, and Michael McWhirter discuss Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception versus Gears of War 3. With new gamers buying consoles this fall, which of these two system sellers deserve your hard-earned dollars? Find out as our special edition of the Bonus Round comes to its conclusion. Welcome back to the Bonus Round and our final Versus battle for this episode. And this time we're going to look at two big first-party games. Xbox's entry Gears of War 3 versus PlayStation and Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception. I'm here with Shane, Garnet, and Michael for this battle. Now, obviously, this is a battle that largely depends on which system you own because they're exclusive to their platforms. But let's start with Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception, coming out for PlayStation 3 this November. Uncharted 2, Game of the Year a couple of years ago. This game, again, looks phenomenal. What they showed at E3 was great. In the press conference, there was a behind closed doors demo that I think a lot of us got to see with the cargo plane, which looked even better, I thought, than the sort of ship sequence at the press conference. Shane, does this have a shot to be Game of the Year, or is there a little fatigue here because it's just more Uncharted?
Oh, without question, it has a chance to be Game of the Year, a very good chance to be Game of the Year. If any game that we saw at E3, it really put its full hand down on the table. I mean, it showed us everything. Co-op, competitive multiplayer, amazing campaign set pieces. I mean, this...
Multiple levels of campaign. That's
right.
I think that's why it won Best of Show a couple of years ago at E3, because they just show so much, and they're not afraid to to put a lot of the cards on the table.
I mean, there's very little mystery left with the game, but when the game is that good and that robust, there's no problem with that.
And I think the story is going to be very cool. I mean, they've teased that new villain, Catherine, and how does she factor into it. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of cool set pieces still to be shown, but you're right.
Of course.
It's I think it's going to be a great story. Garnet, when you look at Uncharted, now they're pushing on multiplayer in a big way, it seems like.
Yep.
Is that an important battle for them to fight, or do you think Uncharted is it's about the story?
I still don't get why they want to wade into that arena, because we've already talked earlier in the show about the multiplayer battle just between Battlefield and Modern Warfare.
Right.
And if you're just dudes running around with guns shooting each other, that's really tough no matter what you do. They've got a cool perk system. They have a lot of good things going on for the game. But is that the pull that's going to bring me in?
I think the co-op looks even cooler. I'm excited about the co-op.
The co-op I'm all about. I would rather them even do more down the co-op front and more with the campaign, and let other people do the dudes with guns.
But they've done some cool stuff with the multiplayer as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, some of the levels are like moving planes that you're trying to get up through the cargo hold into the plane.
But then it doesn't matter. Which is
weird,
weird, because I understand the balance equation there of you don't want to punish a team and then have them, fooling around the entire second half of the match. At the same time, it does sort of, pull the rug out a little bit.
Well, I think multiplayer, though, for a lot of people, it convinces them to rent it or buy the game. Because they know once they finish that campaign, they're going to have co-op to go through. They're going to have head-to-head multiplayer to go through. I mean, I don't think there's a detriment to adding multiplayer to a game, provided it's good. And in this case, it is very good.
As long as it doesn't take away from the single player. It doesn't seem like
they've demonstrated they've got that covered. That's not a concern.
Uncharted 3 from a campaign perspective looks phenomenal. Michael, you got to see it at E3. What's your take on Uncharted 3? Obviously, a great franchise. I'm a huge fan of it. Do you think this has a shot to break out in a big way? Because one of the challenges with Uncharted, I think, is it's a PlayStation 3 exclusive title. And it's going to be great for PlayStation fans, but is this going to move hardware? I mean, is this going to be a big hit, or is success for it really just selling better than Uncharted 2?
I think the latter. I don't. For whatever reason, some PlayStation fans are not latching on to the Uncharted series like they really should, because it is one of the hallmarks of the system. And I'm not quite sure why that is. I don't know if it's just kind of the looser multiplayer shooting mechanics. Maybe people just aren't into platforming games. I don't know what it is.
It's the setting, right?
Yeah.
When you try to tell someone about Uncharted, they're like, well, what is it? And you're like, well, it's kind of like Indiana Jones. There's this guy that's real slick, and he travels all over the world. And they're like,
Yeah, you're right. It's like versus like Kratos or like
Right,
where it's like
right.
bloody.
It's this great
and it's
god,
like,
and he slays demons the size of the sky. Like,
Wait, I can identify with Indiana Jones way more than I can identify with Kratos.
But I think you're right. It's like from a
it's not a big story to
positioning
tell, is what I'm trying to
standpoint,
say.
it's a challenge. It's like the idea of adventure. Like when you play the game, you know how great it is. But it's one of those games that when you see the TV spot or something like that, it's hard to really
I think it's
wonder
hard,
what it is.
and maybe it's difficult for them to sell the cinematic nature of that game because that's really what's so appealing about
The fact that you feel like you're playing that. Playing a movie,
it's just like it's the technical. Those guys are amazing. I can't believe that they can make.
No, it's
games
still in
like that
Uncharted too. I mean,
fantastic.
there were those moments that we all remember where it's like you're about to put the controller down, you think you're watching a movie, and you pick it up, and you're like, oh crap, I'm actually having to play this.
Well, I think this industry is in a place where it's finding it very difficult to sell what I like to call classy games. Games that aren't like a bald space marine blowing crap up and green blood flying everywhere. I mean, I think we saw it with the first BioShock. Amazing game, but probably didn't do the sales that it deserved. We've seen it this whole time with Uncharted. We can stand on the top of every mountain and say how great it is, but ultimately the game needs to sell itself. And when you have like these sort of subtleties in games that really set them apart, I think when you look at a game like Uncharted, it tends to look a little generic. And so I think that's been the hurdle that they've had to get over.
Did you just call Uncharted generic?
I
You
said-
guys are baffling me
I
on this
said-
whole
He's
thing.
just a regular dude.
I said it looks generic. I didn't say it was generic.
Wow, I don't know another game that I compare Uncharted to. Maybe that's the problem.
Because you actually play it. I'm talking about people who don't play the game and look at a screenshot of Nathan Drake and then a screenshot of Gears. And there's this huge tentacle creature getting ready to smash some dude. And over here you have a guy with like a gun. I don't know. To me, it's
But maybe
it's a
part of
hard
the problem is that there isn't a genre basket that we can put Uncharted into that has a number of other competitors. Because we talk about shooters, there are plenty of shooters we can talk about. We can say, oh, it's like this one and like that one and like this one. We talk about
it's wholly
even-
unique. Yeah.
It's completely unique. So I think it's the opposite of generic.
I did not say the game was generic. I said to other people, it looks generic.
Like I'm
Sorry.
saying, it's like
Twist
it
my
just
words up.
looks like a regular guy with
Sorry.
a gun, and it's like when you're going up against these super fantastical worlds with
Right,
dragons.
I mean, just think
things
about
like
going
that,
into a store and looking at the cover of Uncharted and some guy with the treasure chest and there's a bunch of sand around, there's a hot chick under. I mean, there's nothing.
Right, it has to be more about like the story and the characters.
And
then
we
the setting,
expect that people are diving into games as much as we do.
true.
Going to
They're
our
looking at a
sites
box,
every day.
right. Yeah.
A lot of them go and look at a box or they watch one trailer and they're like, "Whoa, it just seems like an Indiana Jones ripoff." I think that's why, despite
Oh, you think
its
that
quality,
could hurt it? I didn't think about that.
I just think it's in a precarious position. It's like once you play it, you get it and you understand it. And I think that's why
everyone's
you've
got to
seen,
play it. Exactly. That's the thing is you got to go hands on.
and that's why you've seen the sales for the first two go up. So Uncharted 2 did better than Uncharted 1 because people tried Uncharted 1. They're like, oh, this is way better than I thought it would be. Those people jumped on. Then inevitably it gets some new consumers for the sequel. Hopefully the third one continues that trend.
Yeah, well, it looks phenomenal. We can't wait to check it out in November. Now, Gears of War 3 is the Xbox's big exclusive entry, I guess, besides Forza for the holiday season. This is coming out in September. Was delayed from in April launch. Was supposed to come out. Was at E3. They showed a new demo. I think suffered a little just because it was at second E3, so people had seen it before. They did the multiplayer beta, which I think went pretty well for them this spring, and folks were really excited about that. Michael, what's your take on Gears of War 3? This is a big franchise for Xbox. I don't think it's as big as Halo. They're hoping to sort of build it to Halo caliber. You think this game has a shot to be that the game of the year for the Xbox fans?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's the Microsoft's linchpin release for the year, and I'm not as excited about another Gears of War maybe as I am as Uncharted 3.
Right.
And I played it. It's a lot of fun, and no disrespect to the people at Epic Games because it's a beautiful looking game, and it has its moments of class too. But again, a lot of it kind of feels. Well, talking about classy games, I kind of have to agree with Shane there, in that it is.
I am the sore thumb today.
Maybe a little more thoughtful than the action of Gears of War, even though I know that those people put a lot of energy and thought into the story and the characters.
Yeah, Gears. I mean, it's over the top. Michael Bay-ness, and they sort of embrace it.
I'm just that is not as appealing to me as Uncharted 3, where I might get a more interesting cinematic story and some multiplayer that I may not have experienced a couple times before. What did you have a comment on that?
Garnet, what's your take
I got it coming.
So what's your take on Gears of War 3? Is this?
Well, I think the thing with
real
Gears is that Horde mode in the second game really embodies everything about Gears that works because it gives you what you really want. I mean, we talked about storytelling and Uncharted as a high point.
Yep.
Let's not beat around the bush. Storytelling in Gears is a mess.
Yeah.
Yep.
And every attempt that they've made to give me more connection to the characters has actually backfired and just made it more supercilious.
This is
It's
one of these.
it's just ridiculous.
This is one of these end of the trilogy where it's like I don't think you really even understand where you were in the first two, and
It's hard to like the characters in Gears. I
Yes.
mean, to be honest with you, they're all very gruff and uncaring and unfeeling. And then they put out these trailers with like this emotional music, and you're like, really? Like that's not the vibe I get from that game.
And so you play Horde mode, and it clicks. This is what this game is about. Great mechanics, great enemies to shoot, especially you're playing co-op there, so you've got your buddies.
And a different kind of multiplayer too. It's not
different
just,
kind of
run
multiplayer.
around and gun guys.
And you know what they're doing with Horde Mode 2.0 with the suits? Looks like it'll add a new wrinkle to it. Everyone likes to play with mech suits. They've obviously got that part down.
Yeah.
It's just...
Well, everybody has Horde mode now, right? I mean,
Well,
that's
everybody copied them.
Right,
but
that's what we saw
You're
of,
still going to play the original.
Well, yeah. But that's what I saw of Modern Warfare 3 at E3 was their take on Horde mode. So I think now that's
Everyone's
not...
got waves.
Yeah, it's not a unique selling proposition anymore.
So what about competitive multiplayer? Because we know Gears is going to make a big push on multiplayer front because that's perceived as their weakness.
Yeah, I think the beta seemed. I mean, the reaction
good.
I heard. I mean, people were positive on the beta. I think they got a lot of good feedback from that. I think that's where the extra time pushing from April to September is going to help them refine the multiplayer. So I think they're going to nail the multiplayer. I think the question is, for that franchise, as a single player game, as a as a hallmark of Xbox, is it going to be as big as they want it to be or Xbox needs it to be, this holiday season?
Well, I think the multiplayer in Gears 2 actually came under a lot of heat when it was released. I mean, it
did.
took a long time.
That's why I think they needed the beta this time to really set this stuff up.
Right, but I mean, I think we thought we had the same feeling about Gears 2 multiplayer
Right.
going into the release of Gears 2, and now here we are sitting with 3. Sure, I played the beta, had some fun with it, but there's still a lot to prove on that arena. They lost a lot of customers whenever they launched Gears 2, and again, I think this is one of those games that people buy more for the multiplayer, just like Modern Warfare, than they do for the campaign. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, they literally could have burned their butts pretty good with the Gears 2 launch. So it'll be interesting to see how many people come back without that unique selling proposition. It might be a little tough for them.
And what do you guys think about the campaign? I mean, the level at E3 looked good. They're talking about co-op obviously as being an important part of Gears this time. The game I think has a distinct look to it, and I think was really distinct for Gears 1. Now I think they've always, they've been struggling to sort of, keep it fresh and different and looking unique, whereas, Uncharted is going to all these different cities and locations. I mean, you guys, the campaign, it sounds like you're saying it's more about the multiplayer, right?
Oh, I'd agree with that. I also think the campaign demo they showed at E3 last year was way better than the one they showed this year.
Yeah.
The one this year just seemed a little more like typical action game. You got the big monster smashing down the deck, shoot the eyeball.
Shoot the hit point, yeah.
It was good. It looked fun, but the one before felt more Gears to me, if that makes sense. It just had a little more terror involved in it.
Showed different cover ways.
Right.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's all about co-op, and the beauty of Gears is being able to play the entire campaign in co-op. And I've done that once, and starting through it again another time because it is really fun just to play with someone else because you don't even care about the story at that point. As a matter of fact, story almost gets in the way if you're in co-op because it's like, well, Shane,
Can
are
I
you
skip this?
Yeah, are you at the same point in the cutscene that I'm at? Are we getting the story?
Play through together.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Bonus round, all four of us. There
you go.
All right, Michael, you have to pick between Uncharted and Gears. I'd like to know where you're going to go, but what's your pick?
Yeah, I'm going to go Uncharted, just because I'm interested in seeing how that story plays out. I have had a lot of fun with the multiplayer in that game, even though it does have maybe a little bit of jank in some of the mechanics. I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, the thing I do like about Gears 3's story, to defend it a little bit, is the non-linear stuff that they showed.
Yeah.
And I think that could be interesting. I don't know how often they're going to exploit that, but we'll see.
We will see in September. Garnet, between the two, you're picking?
Well, as you might have heard from my vehement defense, I think Uncharted, for me, is the ultimate franchise of this generation, and I can't wait for number 3. And I hope people will not just glaze over and go, oh, it's Uncharted, of course it's great.
Not generic at all.
It's not generic at all.
All right, Uncharted,
classic.
what's your pick, Shane?
I'll take Uncharted, definitely. I think the best way
I think first time everyone's agreed.
Yeah. Sweet. I would say the one way I would compare these games is Gears is kind of the jock, and Uncharted is kind of the nerd. Yeah. And I always side with the nerds. So
Calling me a nerd?
we're on it.
No, it's going to be an amazing year for games across the board. I think all the games in these versus battles, you can't go wrong probably. I mean, all 8 of these are going to be phenomenal games for the holiday season. There's still other ones we haven't talked about. All right, well, that's it for this time on the bonus round. We'll see you next week for an all-new episode.
Bonus round.